and welcome. This is Consolous representing rebeldiscord.com, and what a better way to talk about rebellion than talking about punk rock. I'm not really into punk rock music at all, but hey, Joan Jett and the Blackhearts is gonna be playing with the other bands that I've recently reviewed, which is Motley Crue, Poison and Def Leppard, so I just thought I was gonna review all of them. So, Joan Jett and the Blackhearts. Who are the members? Joan Jett and the Blackhearts. No need to talk more about that. Let's move on. What is the summary of the whole album? It's mostly cover songs translated into the punk rock sound. It's not pure punk rock though. There's a lot of different qualities that we'll talk about later, taken from other genres, which make her sound a little more unique than, you know, the Sex Pistols, the Ramones, and other more, I guess, iconic bands of the 70s. And this album came in the 80s, so it makes sense, but we'll talk more about that later. The whole album is pretty short when it comes to the song length. The average length is like 2 minutes to 3 minutes, but throughout the years there have been many reissues of the album, and with each reissue many new songs have been coming, so I just listened to the full album with all the added songs on Spotify, which means it's like 15 songs, but it evens out because, like I've mentioned in other reviews, usually the average album length is like 45 minutes, so all those 15 songs, but they're all so short, it ends up being like 46 minutes, so it ends up being like a good duration for an album. But when it comes to the songwriting itself, like I mentioned before, it's mostly covers of all their songs, so the songwriting varies a little bit, but the core sound is the Joan Jett sound, which is her own style of punk rock. But they're very, you know, they're very loyal to the original sound, but at the same time she does give it her own original twist. So if you like those old songs but you want a little more edge, perfect for that is her music. Before we keep moving, you may be like, how rebellious are you? Why are you talking about rebellious? You don't look rebellious. Well, let me tell you something. I'm not wearing any pants right now, okay? That's how rebellious I am. I'm taking a risk here, okay? Nobody can see it, but I'm taking a risk. Well, who knows if I'm lying? Who knows if I'm telling the truth? That's up to you to decide. But anyway, let's get back to the songwriting. Some of the most common techniques. You know, punk rock is a very simplistic genre. Like, that's their whole ideal for music. It's simple, short songs. But the most common technique is just strumming the power chords. The power chord is the bread and butter, so they just strum power chords, which creates like a wall of sound, or they will just let it ring and the drums and the bass will just keep on going. That's kind of the main techniques when it comes to the guitar that I saw. The solos, we'll talk about that later. There's usually no solos in punk rock music, but in Joan Jett's case there's a few solos. They're not the most complex, but there are solos, so that's very important. In a few songs I even heard some walking bass technique, which is something that you would hear in jazz or blues. So, but it makes sense because again they're covers, so it's not like she made it up. The older song had that, so she put it in her song. But overall, if I have to summarize the songwriting, is covers of older songs with a punk rock feel, but with influences taken from other genres such as classic rock, jazz, and blues. Jazz only subtly, like the walking bass, that's the most jazz you'll hear here. So it's mostly classic rock merged with punk rock. When it comes to the production, punk rock is also known for the simplicity of their production. Sometimes they would even keep mistakes here and there to make it feel raw. But the sound of this album of Joan Jett, the I Love Rock and Roll album, is very polished actually, but it could be an inaccurate opinion. I don't know how the original sounded. It probably was not as well produced, but the one I heard on Spotify is probably remastered. So yes, the mix is very clear, the vocals are very clear, the drums are clear, and they sound like classic rock drums more than punk rock drums. And the bass is sometimes even louder than the guitars, but not always, and not that much louder. But it gives it a little bit of, you know, like a groove to the music. But overall, pretty good mix. I don't have anything to criticize. No bad frequencies here and there. Everything's good. Then we go to the vocals. The vocals, they're cool. I mean, she doesn't have the best technique ever, but just like in the case of Poison, she has a lot of personality in her singing. Like, it's kind of cute in a sense because her voice sounds good. Like, I like her feminine voice, but the way she sings it sounds like, sometimes, like, imagine you're a kid in a neighborhood, and you have your neighbor and they're like screaming to your door to come out to play. So they would be like, "Hey, come out and play." That's kind of like how she sings. She sings like she's calling you to go play. But at the same time, it's not like screaming. Like when you think of screaming in rock music, you think rah, 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 like growling kind of sound. She does not growl. She just yells. Maybe the better word is yells. But at the same time, she's singing. It sounds like she's singing. It sounds melodic, but it doesn't have that much technique. You will not hear vibrato, for example. But who am I to criticize? I can't do vibrato yet either. But anyway, overall, sounds good. She has an attitude. She has an attitude of "don't f with me," but at least to me personally, it feels like your little sister who's like, "I'm gonna kick your ass," and you're like, "Okay, okay." But that's just me. So it has its cute charm, but it has its rebellious personality too. Then lastly, we have the guitar solos, which I mentioned before. It's surprising in punk rock music, but it's not that surprising in the sense that the solos themselves are very simple, so they kind of do live up to the ideal of this kind of music to be simple and simplistic. So the solos, it's mostly the minor pentatonic scale, and sometimes it's just licks, so they shouldn't even be considered solos here and there, but they made the songs more interesting. The highlights, of course, the title song, "I Love Rock and Roll," is an iconic song and an iconic cover. Like, her cover still appears in the classic rock radio. We have Crimson and Clover, which I think it had some controversy of her not changing the "her" to "him," but who cares, it's not a big deal. We have "Love Is Pain," which is one of the originals of her. It's a good song, memorable, basic riffs, we know that, but it's memorable, it sounds good. "You're Too Possessive," which actually shows some of her long range, because she sings, "You're too possessive," and she holds the note long enough for you to appreciate it. Still with not much technique, but she keeps it in tune, which is the most important thing. And we also have "I'm Gonna Run Away," which also has a very catchy chorus. Lastly, to conclude, it's a punk rock album with classic rock influences, a female singer, personality on the vocals. It's mostly cover songs, but they're made their own by Joan Jett and her backing band. So overall, I'm not really into this kind of music, into the punk rock or anything like that, but I could appreciate it for what it is. And "I Love Rock and Roll" is an iconic song, so even though, again, I'm not into this genre too much, you gotta rock out to that song, you know? Okay, and lastly, don't forget to subscribe, give a like, and request any album you may want me to review. I mostly do 80s melodic rock, AOR, hair metal kind of music, but you know, here and there I'll be doing some other kind of rock music. Like here we have Joan Jett, who's punk rock, so don't be shy about that. And lastly, don't forget to awake the rebel within.